Dozens of people are searching for a missing hiker in the gorge.
21-year-old Riley Zickel set out on an overnight hike by himself.
Cowden County Sheriff's Office is searching for a missing hiker on the Olympic Peninsula.
Ron and Trevor Higgins, the father and son, were last seen Friday. They disappeared while hunting near Bear Camp Road above Agnes.
21-year-old Riley Zickel, the senior at Lewis and Clark College, disappeared.
An emotional plea from friends of a woman who is missing right now in the Skamania County wilderness. She's 19 years old, Maureen Kelly.
Searchers are looking for a 76-year-old farmer who did not come back from mushroom hunting near Grangeville.
There's something about the Pacific Northwest that stays with you. Maybe it's the fog curling through the trees, the way the light filters through the evergreens like stained glass. Or maybe it's the silence. The kind of silence that settles in your chest and refuses to let go. But not everything that disappears into the woods stays buried. I'm Tanner Hoskins, Executive Director here at Pacific Northwest Missing Persons Project, and you are listening to the Pacific Northwest Missing Persons Podcast. In this episode, we're traveling through decades of fear and heartbreak. 3 chilling cases that echo across the canyons, rivers, and ridgelines of our region. Stories that begin like any other. A family camping on a holiday weekend, a young couple hiking in the woods, a child biking home under the summer sun. And then, gone. No goodbyes, no trail, just a slow, suffocating weight of not knowing. Today, we'll revisit the Cowden Family Disappearance. An entire family vanished from their campsite in southern Oregon. The Tube Sock murders, where love, terror, and mystery collide deep in the Washington wilderness, and the Lewis-Clark Valley murders, where the stage of a small-town theater may have concealed something far more sinister than a script. What connects these stories isn't just the horror, it's the terrain, the remoteness, the way a person or a whole family can vanish without a sound. And maybe it's how close these cases still feel, like they're watching from the tree line. Let's begin. Labor Day weekend, September 1st, 1974. Richard Cowden and his wife Belinda and their children, 5-year-old David and 5-month-old Melissa, had set up camp near Carberry Creek, just outside the ghost town of Copper, Oregon. It was a favorite getaway spot for the Cowdens, remote, peaceful, familiar. That morning, Richard walked his son into the local grocery store to buy milk. The cashier remembered them. Nothing seemed unusual. But hours later, the entire family would vanish. When Richard didn't show up for dinner with his mother, something completely out of character, she went to their campsite to check in. What she found was something out of a Twilight Zone episode. The family's truck parked in its usual place. The table, set up, folded laundry, baby supplies, an unopened carton of milk. Their dog was tied to a tree nearby, alive, but visibly distressed. But the Cowdens vanished like smoke in the wind. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints leading away, just absence. Search and rescue teams descended on the area. Helicopters swept the terrain. Volunteers fanned out across miles of forest. But weeks turned into months with nothing. Then, in April of 1975, 7 months later, 2 hikers discovered something horrifying. Roughly 7 miles from the campsite in a remote and rocky area, they stumbled across the decomposing remains of the entire Cowden family. Richard's body was down a steep ravine. Belinda, David, and baby Melissa were tucked inside a shallow cave. Richard had been shot in the head. The others appeared to be bludgeoned to death. Who would do something so monstrous? And more importantly, why? The case quickly drew suspicion toward a man named Dwayne Lee Little, a convicted murderer who had recently been paroled. He was reportedly in the area that weekend, and years later, he would be arrested again for the brutal rape and attempted murder of a young woman. But while his name came up time and again, no direct evidence ever tied him to the Cowden family. To this day, 50 years later, no one has been charged. What haunts me the most isn't just the violence, it's the silence. Why did a young family with 2 small children suddenly leave their fully stocked campsite? Was it someone they trusted? A stranger with a weapon? Or was there something in those woods that they were trying to escape? Why take nothing with them? And why move the bodies, hiding some in a cave and casting Richard away down an embankment? Was it calculated or symbolic? We may never know. Here's what I want you to ask yourself. Could a single person have committed these murders, moved all 4 bodies, and left no trace? What makes someone capable of slaughtering an entire family and then vanishing without a single eyewitness? Is this case still solvable, or is the truth buried somewhere deep in that Oregon wilderness? You ever feel like a place is trying to tell you something? Like the trees are whispering secrets, but only to those who know how to listen? This next story takes us back to 1985 in the dense, rain-soaked wilderness of southwest Washington. It's a case that feels stitched together with confusion, coincidence, and cruelty, and it's never been solved. This is the story of the Tube Sock murders. It starts early on August 10th of 1985. A couple, Stephen Harkins, 27, and Ruth Cooper, 42, had driven out to Toole Lake in Pierce County, Washington. They were going camping. Just the 2 of them, a dog, and the quiet. But when Stephen didn't return to work and Ruth missed a family event, concern spread fast. 4 days later, Stephen was found, dead, shot execution style in the head near their campsite. Their dog, also dead, also shot. But Ruth, she was gone. Weeks passed. Then, in October, hikers stumbled across a skeleton in the woods near the Ohop Lake area, about 1.5 miles from where Stephen was found. It was Ruth. She'd been shot in the stomach. But that wasn't the only thing that stuck out. Around her neck was a men's white tube sock. And that strange detail? It would resurface in the worst possible way. Fast forward just 4 months. December 12th, 1985. Another couple, Mike Reimer, 36, and Diana Robertson, 21, along with their toddler daughter Crystal, leave their home in Tacoma, Washington for a trip to the Nisqually area. Mike was a trapper and very familiar with the backcountry. The plan was to check some lines and pick out a Christmas tree. That was the last time anyone saw them. Later that day, Crystal was found wandering alone in a Kmart parking lot, miles from the woods. She was dirty, confused, and alone. She was only 2 years old. In January, Diana's body was found deep in the woods. She had been stabbed 17 times in the chest. And again, tied around her neck, was a men's white tube sock. But Mike, gone, vanished. Here's where things get a little murky. Some theorize that Mike had killed Diana, dropped off his daughter, and fled back into the woods, either to escape or to take his own life. Others believed he was possibly the second victim. In 2011, 26 years later, near Mineral, Washington, a man checking on his 20-acre property in a rural forested area stumbled upon what he thought was a bear's skull with a tree growing out of it. The man grabbed a neighbor to show him the tree growing out of the skull, and the neighbor immediately knew what they were seeing. It was a human skull. Law enforcement responded with canines and forensic teams. They cut down the tree growing out of the skull to find that it was about 26 years old. Upon further investigation, law enforcement located a partial skeleton in the area and an old identification card that was too weathered to read. But dental records confirmed it. It was Mike Reimer. Mike's remains were located 1.5 miles from where Diana was found deceased. Everyone's speculation that Mike was Diana's killer now didn't make much sense. So the question becomes, was there a serial killer in the woods of Washington in the mid-'80s? Or are these two cases a horrifying coincidence? The victims didn't seem to know each other. The locations were dozens of miles apart, and the cause of death wasn't even the same. Shooting versus stabbing. But the sock was identical. Now think about this. The sock was not used to strangle, but left tied around the neck post-mortem, almost ritualistic, like a signature or a warning. To this day, the cases remain technically unsolved. Some speculate about a serial predator familiar with the backwoods terrain. Others still think Mike was responsible for Diana's murder and later died by suicide or exposure. But here's something no one can explain. Who left Crystal at that Kmart? She was 2. She could not have gotten there on her own. Was it Mike or someone who had just killed both of her parents? Let's chew on this. How do you explain the same eerie signature, a tube sock, appearing in 2 separate cases? Why did the killer spare the dog in the second case, but not the first? And what kind of person leaves a 2-year-old alone in a parking lot, but makes sure that she's found? Is it remorse, strategy, or just another twisted part of the puzzle? The Lewis-Clark Valley sits quietly along the Washington-Idaho border, where the Snake and Clearwater rivers twist through the deep canyons and rolling hills. It's beautiful country, wide open, peaceful, or at least it should be. Between 1979 and 1982, this region became the hunting ground for someone who moved like smoke, a person who abducted, tortured, and murdered young people, and then disappeared, leaving only heartbreak and mystery behind. This is the story of the Lewis-Clark Valley murders. The nightmare began in April of 1981, when Kristen David, a 22-year-old University of Idaho student, disappeared while biking from Moscow to Lewiston. Days later, her dismembered remains were found in garbage bags, washed up along the banks of the Snake River. Her head had been removed. Parts of her body were missing. It wasn't just murder. It was deliberate surgical violence. And the worst part? She wasn't the first. 2 years earlier, in June of 1979, Christina White, just 12 years old, went missing from Assateague, Washington, a small, quiet town. She'd attended a county fair and called her mom from a friend's house complaining of heat stroke. She was told to rest and drink water. That was the last time anyone ever heard from her. No struggle, no scream, no witness. She vanished completely. That same summer, in a chilling twist, the friend's house she called from was later tied to a prime suspect in multiple disappearances. But I'll come back to that. In September of 1982, the Valley's peace was shattered again. Christina Nelson, 21, and her stepsister Jacqueline Brandy Miller, 18, were walking to a grocery store in Lewiston, Idaho. They were never seen alive again. That same night, Stephen Persall, 35, a janitor at the Lewiston Civic Theater, also vanished. He'd planned to do laundry and hang out with friends after work. He left his wallet, keys, and clarinet in the theater's dressing room and was never seen again. 3 young people, 1 night, and only 2 bodies ever found. Years later, hikers discovered the remains of Christina and Brandy down a steep ravine near Kendrick, Idaho, their bones hidden in brush and forest. But Stephen? Gone. Not a trace. No body, no clue. So what ties these cases together? The answer might lie inside that civic theater. Investigators would later zero in on a man, someone who worked at the Lewiston Civic Theater at the same time as Stephen. A man with a violent past who had access to the building and was the stepfather of the boy whose house Christina White had vanished from. This man was allegedly the last person to see several of these victims alive. He even drove the same road Kristen David had been biking along when she disappeared. He moved away from the region shortly after the murder stopped. But despite decades of suspicion, interviews, and mounting circumstantial evidence, he's never been arrested, never charged, never convicted, and as of today, he still walks free. Let that sink in. Multiple victims, multiple scenes, a single geographic area, a timeline of horror stretching over 3 years. But no justice, no closure, only pain. Think about this the next time you drive a quiet road, go for a camping or hiking trip, or walk into a community building. Could a local theater have been a kill zone for one of the worst serial crimes in Northwest history? Why has no physical evidence ever surfaced tying the main suspect to the victims? What happened to Stephen Persall, and did he walk in on something that he shouldn't have? Was the perpetrator someone hiding in plain sight, or someone protected by silence? We always think we'd see a monster, but sometimes monsters act. Sometimes they direct. Sometimes they charm, and they get away with it. The Lewis-Clark Valley is still one of the most scenic places you'll ever see, and for the families of Christina, Kristen, Christina, Brandy, and Stephen, it's a place frozen in time and in grief. Someone out there knows the truth. If you do, please speak before it's too late. Something I want you to take away from all this. The woods do not forget. The trails we walk today were once crossed by people who vanished without a trace. People who never got to come home. And while time might fade the headlines, it doesn't erase the pain that's left behind. Every single missing person is someone's child, someone's sibling, and someone's friend. And sometimes the answers they deserve are out there, buried beneath a blanket of moss, tucked behind a log, or hanging quietly in the memories of a passerby who might have saw something but didn't know what it meant. If you plan to recreate in the great outdoors, please get to know the missing person cases in the area that you plan to recreate in. You never know when you might find something that brings answers or closure to a grieving family.